Islam as a political system is the key to defeating Islam. You know, as a religion, you get protection in our society. And I coined the term political Islam the day after the 9/11 attacks because I realized that we would never defeat a religion because there's too much religious protection in this country. But we can defeat a political system. So I coined the term political Islam because that's the part that concerns you and me. I'm not involved in the religion of Islam, and I don't care about the religion of Islam one way or the other. They pray 5 times a day. I don't care. It doesn't have any impact on me. But, oh, by the way, let me use prayer here as an illustration of the difference between political Islam and religious Islam. More in Europe, it happens a lot, but now it's beginning to happen in the United States, where on a Friday, Muslims will commandeer the streets in order to pray. You may have seen pictures of this in New York. Now then, you say, well, that's their religious right. Stop and look at what's happening here. The religious part is the prayer, but when you commandeer the street, that is a political action. Alex, if I go out here in my neighborhood and commandeer the street, I'm going to meet some people who with blue lights on their car, and they're not going to have a very good attitude about me. It is illegal to block traffic unless you're a Muslim, and then all of a sudden that political action gets the guise of a religious covering. So it's politics that we care about, and it's what we need to do to defeat Islam is we have to accept it.
So it's all definitions, and you talk about how they have like gang language, they have code words that we don't understand. Break some examples of that down, Doctor.
Oh, let's see. How about innocent? It frequently happens that after a killing, they will say, oh, well, Islam forbids the killing of innocents. Well, it does. But you see, I am guilty. I am not innocent. And I bet you're guilty too. What are you guilty of, Alex? You're guilty of denying the prophethood of Muhammad and the perfection of the Quran. So that's the problem, is that we have special words that have special meaning. And that, like I say, innocent is just the same one that comes up all the time.
But it's okay if you're not an innocent. So they're saying, oh, we're against killing innocent, knowing that that's basically a code word, but they're saying, but you're not innocent.
That's exactly correct. As a matter of fact, it goes further than this. It's they'll also, they haven't drugged this out on this event. By the way, have you noticed that there's always the same denials after a jihad event? It's like, well, now we don't want to be blaming Muslims. You know, Islam is a religion of peace. And I know this Muslim, he's a wonderful person. And if we criticize Muslims, that's Muslim bashing. So have you noticed this again and again quality of what everyone drags out?
Well, the quote top imam there in Florida came out and said, do not make this political and turn it into an event to lecture everyone. Well, you know, I preach just the opposite doctrine. Not interested in the lecturing, but I'm interested in people learning. That's the reason I'm interested in being on your show. This is an information war. If we would ever accept that, then we could win this war. And if it's an information war, this means that everybody has to partake in it. For instance, the religious leaders need to start partaking in this war and stand up for what is a political action is that Christians are being killed in Africa and the Middle East on a daily basis. Those are political actions. And we need to get people who first understand the fact that it's going on. And the other thing is we need to get religious leaders involved in opposing this. So it's a civilizational war, and we need to bring everybody in on the act. What about Islamic espionage? They're buying the politicians off. Saudi Arabia alone funds 20% of Hillary's campaign.
You know, Islam is very big on, there are 4 kinds of jihad. There's jihad of the sword, which is what we all heard here. Then there's jihad of speech, jihad of writing, and there's jihad of money. As a matter of fact, the Quran goes on again and again and says that every Muslim must contribute money towards jihad. And by the way, contributing money towards jihad gives you the same blessing as if you had committed the act of jihad itself. So Saudi Arabia spends more money on implementing Wahhabism around the world than communists did at the height of the Cold War. So and Muhammad, by the way, it's clearly written, would use money in order to influence both politics and religion. So the fact that Islam is using money is also part of the fact that they understand civilizational war. I am a strange admirer of the Islamic concepts of war because they're so total. I argue that Muhammad was the greatest warrior who ever lived. Alex, nobody dies today for Alexander the Great, Caesar, or Napoleon, but someone died today because of Muhammad's military leadership. So money is simply part of a civilizational jihad, just like immigration is part of a civilizational jihad. Islam has the most brilliant concepts of war that I've ever read. It uses everything. I just told you earlier how praying in the street becomes a political action and part of a political war. By the way, this goes on long enough until finally it just becomes the way that people do business. And they just say, well, it's Muslims, they can do what they want to do. So Islam understands war and understands it involves money. You look like you're old enough to understand that some people you can't buy, but you can definitely rent. It's hard to find someone that money doesn't influence. But I'm shocked that you think that money would influence Hillary's political position, really.
It is amazing. Do you think every time there's an attack, people are getting more concerned about Islam, or do you think they're starting to go to sleep and get that fatigue from it?
I think that we're winning on the basis of, Alex, if there were only jihad of speech, writing, and money, we would lose this. We wouldn't stand a chance. The only thing that happens is after every jihad event that hits the news, let's be clear here. It is a rare jihad event that comes into the news. It has to be big. But when it does, all of a sudden people are learning because they have their face shoved into it. Alex, we're beginning to win at this is going to sound strange, but we're beginning to win at one level of the information war, which is we now dominate the comment section. No matter how liberal the newspaper may be, if they offer comments, we find that our word is getting in and being heard. So it's sort of shock learning. And
the public's learning the nomenclature. They're learning the Islamic terms. They're learning that this has all been hidden from us.
Well, people are learning in general. For instance, people now understand that there is such a thing as political Islam, that it's not just religion. So I'm optimistic on this point. Our problem is not at the grassroots level, Alex. Our problem is at the top. We're betrayed at the top. The elites are selling us down the road. And it's not just on Islam, by the way. I go to Europe twice a year, and the EU has become an organization of elites that's slowly destroying nations.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're globalists, and that's why they've opened the door up for the Islamicists to come in. Why is the EU allied with the Islamicists?
This is very strange to me. However, its roots are in oil. I was reading a book on one of the master spies before the First World War, and something very interesting happened. And that was that the British, who had dominated the world by the use of ships, had fueled their ships with coal. Then it became very clear that the future of naval warfare lay in oil. It was at this point that scholarship at Oxford and Cambridge and other university studies, other sites, began to view Islam in a more and more favorable light. Before 1920, there were some great books written by university scholars about Islam. But after the need for oil came about, all of a sudden, Britain became more and more compliant and more.
That's right. And the British Empire basically set up these current states, so thought it controlled it, made a deal with it, and now it's infiltrated the global imperial model. We're not under a British Empire, but the British model is still kind of the Anglo-American global government system. That's now caught the Islamic virus, and that's how it's replicating and taking over.
It is. And you know, what's really terrible about all this is everybody who's involved in accommodating ourselves to Islam view themselves as nice people. I've met people who oppose me in my politics, and their motivation is good. That is, from their limited point of view.
They think being nice and be friendly and don't be hateful. Well, they want to put my wife in a cage. Doesn't matter. You be nice, and you sit there and you take it. And now, don't you say Islam blew that building up. Don't you say they want to. Now, they don't have any slavery. They're good people. You're bad. The West is bad. You're bad. By the way, this radio show that started 21 years ago, but syndicated for 19 and a half, funds the entire news operation, the films, the books, the news videos, the newscasts, the audio vignettes that are reaching 26 to 28 million people a week conservatively. Those are very, very conservative numbers. And we're growing exponentially. So we don't just bring you the best products and things that we personally have vetted and used. It's also supporting the info war and a platform to reach so many people. I'm going to go 5 minutes the next hour with our guests, and then David Knight is going to take over. And I'll be back this evening, 6 to 8 p.m. with an Ask Me Anything, the first time I've done it with Reddit. Video links at Infowars.com/AMA. Now, before I go any further, we have 20% off on all Alexa Pure water filtration systems. And it's already the lowest price you're going to find out there anywhere. Everybody should be filtering their water with all the toxic stuff, all the glyphosates, all the chemicals, all the gasoline runoff in the water. It's one of the biggest things you can do is drink purified water, and it's so expensive to get bottled water, even if it's truly clean bottled water. The way to do it, in my view, is gravity-fed filters. We have a wide selection of them. The Alexa Pure is excellent, and the Pro Pure systems are excellent as well. You can check all those out, but 20% off on Alexa Pure water filters at InfoWarsStore.com. And then finally, SolutionsFromScience.com are wonderful folks, longtime sponsors, and they only come around with sponsorship every once in a while when they end up getting a surplus of whatever the latest high-quality solar panel systems are, and they've got a great unit and control system that's incredibly well priced right now at SolutionsFromScience.com. They have solar power generators and are offering a discount to listeners who visit their website. That's SolutionsFromScience.com, or give them a call, 877-327-0365, 877-327-0365. But it's our sponsorship, and it is the products we sell as well that make all this possible. Going back to Dr. Bill Warner of PoliticalIslam.com, getting back to the subject we were covering before the break. I mean, there's so many angles of this. What should we hit now?
You know what I would like to talk about next is, I heard part, I didn't hear it, I read it. Trump's calling out, I think he calls it radical or extreme Islam. This is the wrong term to use. It's very common. It's used by a lot of people. And a friend said to me in a conversation that Obama was rattling Trump's cage because of calling it extreme Islam or radical Islam. Now, I disagree with Trump and I disagree with Obama. What we have here, there are two forms of Islam. One of the key things about learning about Islam is to understand it's dualistic. It always has two manifestations. A 20-second summary. Muhammad preached the religion of Islam for 13 years in Mecca and persuaded 150 Arabs to become Muslims. He moved to Medina. He migrated. That began the process of jihad in politics. He had 100 events of jihad in the last 9 years of his life, and when he died, every Arab in Central Arabia was a Muslim. Here's what the lesson to take home from this is. There are two forms of Islam, a religious Islam and then a political Islam, which includes jihad. So what we should say is that it's not extreme Islam, because if you're doing what Muhammad did, how can you be extreme? No, it is Medinan Islam, or jihad form of Islam. So that we need to start using the precise words. We need to make our own words and use them. Because if what you may view as 9/11 as something extreme, that's on the basis of your ethical system and your system of life. If you're doing what Muhammad did, it cannot be extreme. It cannot be radical. It is normative and normal. So we need to learn to start using the right words.
Sure, and understand why that 99% of terrorism worldwide is from Islamicists, and then why is our government defending it? It's just crazy. It's absolutely over the top. Saudi Arabia won't take one Syrian refugee when they finance the 5-year war to overthrow that country. Saudi Arabia executes gays every week, chops their heads off. Saudi Arabia is financing all sorts of control, mosques being built all over the world, taking Islamic areas that aren't that radical, radicalizing them. Our government's totally in love with it, overthrows governments that are secular like Saddam Hussein, comparatively speaking. And you go back to the untold story behind Saudi Arabia's 41-year U.S. debt secret. I was told this 20 years ago on air by Patriots. It's now all been declassified. Here's another one. Saudi Arabia warns of economic fallout if Congress passes 9/11 bill. The 28 pages. Saudi Daily, satanic bills allows kingdom to be sued. Will open the gates of hell for U.S. U.S. secretly destroyed evidence in trial of accused 9/11 masterminds. And Hillary has gotten 20% of her funding, according to the Associated Press, from Saudi Arabia alone. How could any, quote, feminist out there who claims they care about women be for Hillary when she's in the hip pocket of the Gulf states, Dr. Warner?
Well, you know, you and I will use the term feminist, but I'm not so sure there's any feminists left. How can you call yourself or if there are feminists, they seem to be concerned with the fact that if a woman has an MBA, then she should be the chief executive officer. They love to talk about that glass ceiling.
It's all about power grabs. It's not about actually taking care of anybody.
It really isn't, because how can There are several classes of people in the United States that I condemn broadside, which means they're not everybody, but I say